Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Ben Beshear with LiveWell Capital, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Joe Caserta at now McKinsey. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation with Joe. Joe, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Glad to be here.
We're going to open up with, I think, probably a layup question because it's so recent. So June 1st of this year, you sold your company to McKinsey. That acquisition is hot off the presses. We're only 3 weeks in. Tell our audience why you decided to partner with McKinsey.
Yeah, partner is a great word. The relationship started as a partnership. We started working together on a couple of client engagements, and the synergy was just so organic and so natural. I launched this business 20 years ago, and has grown it, as much as I possibly could as a single person. And I think we've excelled so far to really keep it going. It's time to get us to the next level. And a little bit of history, McKinsey was Caserta's very first client when I launched in 2001. And so when I was at McKinsey working internally, we built their internal data warehouse back in the day. And while I was there, the culture that they had just felt right. And I worked for a few consulting firms before I launched Caserta, which did not feel right. And so when I launched Caserta, going to McKinsey was kind of kismet to learn this is the way a consulting firm ought to be run. So when I thought about the opportunity of the merger or acquisition, it was just a natural fit. It was a no-brainer. After working together in the past year, and just seeing the synergy, seeing the people, seeing they retain the culture for the 20 years that I built my company on, it's just a very natural progression.
And for those that will be watching this, some people are tech people and some people aren't tech people. In its simplest terms, the company you built, Caserta, what does that company do in its simplest terms, down to a non-tech person like myself understanding that?
Sure. So I'll give you another brief history lesson about Caserta. So before I got into data, I studied actual architecture, and I worked in the construction industry in New York City. So you can see I still live in New York City. I love buildings. I love building things. And when you think of the construction industry, right, the greatest building in the world is going to fall, the greatest looking building will fall down if it doesn't have the right architecture and the right engineering, right? So when it comes to data, it's very, very similar. If you don't have the right architecture when you're building a data platform, and you don't have the right engineering around all of the data movement and the data at rest, it's not going to work properly, right? It's going to be just like a building. It's going to be unstable. It's going to make people uneasy using it. It'll give inaccurate results. So what I did is I came up with hardened architecture methods and hardened engineering methods that I learned in the construction industry, and applied them to data. And I wrote a book about it back in 2004. And that became the standard on how to integrate data for analytics. And I was lucky enough to have a guy named Ralph Kimball co-write the book for me. Because I was young back then, and he really taught me about writing. I was a technologist, and it was a great relationship. And that book is now the standard. And so when you want to build something that is going to be repeatable, sustainable, used for decades, right, you need to really focus on the architecture of it, the engineering of it. And that's what I built Caserta around, making that our core competency.
We love interviewing founders, and that's obviously part of what today is about. Do you think, we get interesting answers when we ask this of founders. Did you enjoy being a technologist more or an entrepreneur more as you were building the company?
I like challenge, and client solutions are always challenging, always fun, always interesting to come up with solutions that, because we typically at Caserta, we're typically the SWAT team, right? We come in when maybe it's been tried with another consulting firm before, maybe it was tried in-house, or maybe it was just such an overwhelming problem that they call us in because they can't afford to fail. Lots of data transformation initiatives going on in the world right now. So those challenges are always interesting for me. It never gets old. Still love consulting to this day. Building a business from scratch, growing a business, learning how to run a business, balance sheet, P&L, marketing, sales, how to apply it all, how to grow, how to keep the culture straight with, how to keep people excited and motivated, retention. All of these things are just things that a technologist doesn't know, and so learning on the fly, applying what I learn, is, to me, that's exciting. And that's, and that also never gets old. Right. So it's just two different parts of the brain, I think. One is much more structured. One is much more creative. The business side is more structured. To me, the solutioning is more creative, but I love it all. It's great. And the fact that I can do both, even more so with McKinsey, I think it's exciting times for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we look at businesses, and this is broader than just tech and broader than data, 90% of businesses that start don't make it 5 years. I think we're all familiar with that stat. And of the 10% that make it, 70% never sell. 70% die with the founder, unfortunately. And so you're a unicorn of sorts, and the fact that you made it through the first 5 years and you had an acquisition. What's the number one thing you learned building the company to where it is now, and then in acquisition? And you don't have to narrow it down to one. Maybe it could be 1, 2, 3 things. But what did you learn in that process? Because I think you've done what most people that start a business want to do. And what are some words of wisdom for those younger entrepreneurs?
Sure. I belong to a couple of CEO groups in New York City, so we talk about this topic a lot. And I think the biggest hurdle that startup CEOs tend to have is they think they're the one-man show, and it's not scalable. So what happens is when the CEO is at the center of every decision, at the center of every piece of business, at the center of every, employee issue, right? It's not scalable. It's going to fall apart. And that generally is what happens. I think if you are doing a startup, having a leadership team that you can trust with your eyes closed, I think that is the key to success. And also understanding your own limitations. And being able to ask for help, right? And then having people you trust to help you. And part of understanding my limitations is also what prompted the acquisition, right? Understanding that I've taken this company as far as me as an individual could probably take it. And I think I owe it to all of the employees who work for me to take them to the next level, right? Their personal career path at McKinsey is going to be way beyond what I can ever give them at Caserta. It's two different stratospheres, right? And it makes me super excited to be able to give that to them.
No, that's awesome, and I think it leads well into the next question. As you look at and you've hinted at this a little bit, as you look at the next phase, and you look at your evolving capability. Now that you've partnered with McKinsey, What's next?
Stick with it, steer the course. One of the exciting parts, I think, for me is taking what I've built. We're a small business. We're 60 people. And now we're with McKinsey, which is 30,000 people, right? It's very, very different. The opportunities are literally endless, right? This may sound crazy, but I wanted it to be the best data consultancy in the world. I think we can go beyond the world at this point, within the near term, right? I think that the opportunities that the gravitas of McKinsey brings will allow the folks at Caserta to be able to step up and solve bigger, more complex, more visible, help things with like serious issues, climate change, education, healthcare. We're already experts in financial services and insurance and, all of the common things, but really, I believe that being able to partner with the strategists at McKinsey, with the data strategists from Caserta, will be unstoppable, right? I think one of the biggest challenges of other management consulting firms is they don't understand that if you can't have a conversation about data, you don't understand the business, right? 100% of businesses are run by and with and on data. And unless you really have your head around that and your arms around it and can manage it, with the proper architecture, with the proper engineering, with the proper analytics, and tightly coupling it to your business and the way you run your business and your customer experience, you're going to be out of the game. And so now I think this merger and acquisition is, it has to be done, I think for all parties involved.
Well, Joe, I've enjoyed the conversation today. You've made me richer, and you've made this audience richer just by hearing a little bit of your wisdom. And so, Joe Caserta, I want to thank you for joining today. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for it today.
Thanks, Ben. It was great chatting.